But even as you live your own story, you can sense its quiet decay. The first blush of marriage faded for us. Work, his mostly, took over our conversations. Our time together became so scheduled. Thursday night Thai, Saturday morning yoga, the rare date to El Matador Beach on his weekends off, that spontaneity melted away. I wasn't unhappy exactly, but I wasn't alive either. It was as if I were watching my life through thick glass, seeing my real desires and dreams on the other side. It was late, almost midnight, when I first stumbled onto the Secret Life forum. I'd had 2 glasses of red, was restless and alone on the couch while Mike was called in for yet another emergency surgery. The site was a sprawl of confessionals, advice, and daily venting, anonymous and raw. Reading those posts became my guilty solace. Sometimes I posted using the name Rachel Says Hi, but mostly I read. I wasn't the only woman in LA feeling alone in her marriage. I've always believed Los Angeles is a city of beautiful illusions. People come here chasing the sun, new lives, new stories, drawn in by the glow of possibility, only to find out there's always a shadow lurking somewhere. Every palm tree has one. It's easy to get lost here, and maybe that's why I never expected to see my own life unravel so completely. My name is Rachel Lee, 32, product manager in a tech firm you've probably never heard of. I certainly hadn't. Before I landed the job, I'd lived in LA my whole adult life. First as a college student eager to escape Utah, then as a working woman thankful for every warm evening spent in the Silver Lake apartment I shared with Mike. Mike, who could make any room laugh, whose hands never seemed to stop moving when he talked about his work, who held me at night when I woke up anxious. He was a surgeon at Cedars-Sinai, and our friends called us disgustingly put together. Maybe we were, for a while. Hopeful Laleh messaged me after I'd written a reply to a woman considering leaving her husband. Her message was wry, sharp. If you ever figure out how to just pack up and go, let us know. We'll start a club. I laughed out loud, first time in days. I answered. That was how it started. For 3 months, Hopeful LA and I messaged almost every night. We wrote about work frustrations, about the unbearable pressure to perform, about kids we didn't have, and maybe, in my case, didn't want anymore. She'd joke about LA's obsession with closed-off driving and overpriced juice bars. I'd send memes about office culture. Gradually, the conversation turned more personal. Stories about her emotionally distant husband, about late-night dinner parties she attended alone, about bouts of insomnia, about the precise agony of lying right next to someone and feeling like galaxies apart. I related. She was braver than I was, admitting to flirting at parties, longing for some spark, or at least a night where she didn't feel invisible. A secret thread stitched us together, 2 women discussing their messy, imperfect lives, the things we couldn't dare say aloud to our friends, our husbands, maybe even ourselves. We both kept our identities vague. It felt safer that way, as if admitting our truths to a stranger allowed us to stay anonymous, even to ourselves. Outside of all this, my work life ticked on. My manager, Olivia Hayes, made our office run like a well-oiled, slightly intimidating machine. She was everything I wasn't. Tall, glamorous, always immaculate, exuding that angular calm that makes you think she's unshakable. I admired her more than I ever admit. When she joked during Friday drinks that she should be paid in diamonds for her patience, I believed her. One day, Olivia came in late, wearing sunglasses, even inside, her hair swept back, lips pressed thin. That afternoon, I found her in the break room, just staring at the wall. Out of nowhere, she asked, "Do you ever feel like you're a passenger in your own life?" The vulnerability in her voice startled me. I nodded, trying not to sound too eager. "All the time." She let out a half laugh. "That's how I know this city's gotten to me." She never shared more, but suddenly I saw a crack in her armor. I wondered about her life outside these walls. Meanwhile, Mike was more distracted than ever. Some days, he'd stagger in after a double shift, reeking of coffee and disinfectant, and just collapse next to me. Other nights, he'd come home late, shower silently, already focused on the next day. Sometimes, he joked about how his department head, Dr. Hayes, was a nightmare perfectionist. I'd heard about Dr. Hayes for years, never knowing what he looked like, just that Mike respected and perhaps feared him. I didn't try to fill the empty spaces in our marriage anymore. Instead, I poured myself into work, my online friendship, and yes, fantasies about starting over somewhere with more flowers and less concrete. Maybe Venice. Maybe somewhere even further. Through the screen, hopeful LA became my true confidant. She revealed that her husband was high-powered, successful, good-looking, but emotionally vacant. That their home, a sleek glass box somewhere in the Hollywood Hills, felt more like a museum than a place to laugh or cry. That every fight ended in silence, not resolution. She asked me, "Do you ever wish for a crisis, just so you two would actually talk?" Sometimes, late at night, I'd type replies I deleted before sending. What if I said yes every day, yes? Our chats got riskier. We flirted with the idea of meeting, never seriously, but the fantasy made the days feel less gray. I wondered sometimes what life would be like if we really met for drinks in a half-lit bar, hiding behind big... One overcast Sunday, Mike suggested we go to the Ivy for a spontaneous dinner. It was out of character. Neither of us was dressed for anything but pizza delivery. And as we drove through the city, I felt a familiar sense of anticipation, the hopeful buzz of something different. But at dinner, Mike barely touched his food. His phone buzzed, and he stepped out for work. Later, his apology felt more rehearsed than sincere. I tried to not let it ruin the night. That week, hopeful LA mentioned a last-minute trip her husband canceled to Big Bear, which she'd been looking forward to. "Typical," she wrote. "He'd rather operate on strangers than deal with our marriage for 48 hours. I went hiking alone and almost got eaten by an angry squirrel." I laughed, but something in my chest tightened. Mike had canceled a Big Bear trip 2 weeks ago, blaming an emergency at the hospital. It was a small detail, but once noticed, I couldn't let it go. There are thousands of surgeons in Los Angeles, of course, but how many husbands cancel trips to Big Bear for an emergency surgery at Cedars-Sinai at the same time? My brain spun with wild conspiracy theories, which I tried desperately to ignore. LA is a web, I told myself. Everyone's connected to someone. But unease festered, silent and persistent. I tried to test the waters. "Does your husband work at Cedars-Sinai?" I asked hopeful LA as casually as I could. She replied, "God, seems like everyone in my life does. Even my office is working with them on some project." Heart hammering, I asked, "What does he do?" "Surgeon. Shocking, I know. LA has what, 40,000 of them?" Her flippancy was almost convincing. Almost. I started to pull away from our chats, afraid to touch the electric fence of suspicion. I stopped telling her about Mike. I searched for clues in our old conversations, reading and rereading everything she'd sent. Meanwhile, Mike seemed more restless. He spent hours on his phone, texting someone urgently. When I asked, he said it was work, always work. Life pressed on. Olivia asked me to help organize a hospital charity conference. She said her husband was on the board, so I'd need to work closely with his assistant. "No problem," I said, while something inside me twisted. Olivia's husband? Was he at Cedars-Sinai? A few days later, I was in her office, helping sort through schedules, when I glanced at a photo on her desk. Olivia, gorgeous in deep blue at a hospital gala, her hand resting on the arm of a man with dark hair and an easy, photo-ready smile. I froze. I'd seen that smile 1,000 times. Mike. It hit me all at once. Olivia, my immaculate, intimidating boss, was hopeful LA. Her husband was my Mike. I excused myself, stumbled out into the sun, and walked blocks without stopping. Lungs burning, body full of disbelief and dread. The city felt like it was spinning. The glaring light too real, too bright. I didn't sleep that night. Every message, every joke, every word we'd shared online echoed through my head with a sickening, uncanny clarity. What were the odds? Did she know? Did Mike? Had I ended up the villain in my own life? Days passed in a blur of shock. I barely spoke to Mike. I didn't write to Hopeful LA. I tried to piece together what I should do, but nothing made sense. I wondered if I should move out, quit my job, run away. I wondered if it was all a cruel LA joke, the sun exposing everything that should have stayed hidden. Unable to take it anymore, I confronted Mike. I told him I knew everything, but not how. At first he denied, then his face crumpled. He said it meant nothing. I made a mistake. We were lonely. I wanted to scream and laugh all at once. "We?" I asked. Mike said, "I'm sorry. I don't love her. I never stopped loving you." His words felt small, brittle. I wandered through those days like a ghost in my own home. I drank too much, sobbed in the shower, avoided Olivia at work. Finally, hands shaking, I wrote to Hopeful LA. Not as a stranger, but as myself. I told her the whole truth. That I worked for her. That Mike was my husband. That I'd never intended any of this. That I was sorry, so impossibly sorry. I was ready for her rage, her hatred. I was ready for her to fire me or destroy me online. Anything. She didn't reply for days. Mike moved out that weekend. The apartment felt unmoored, full of echoes and unanswered questions. I started therapy, running, writing on the forum again. My old life washed away, one memory at a time. I struggled with shame. How had I missed all the signs? How had I confided in my boss, been drawn to her pain, not knowing it mirrored my own? Would I ever trust myself again? I felt raw, but alive, like waking up after a long fever. Weeks passed. Olivia and I never spoke of what happened. At work, we kept things professional, almost icy. But sometimes, after I posted on The Secret Life, I'd see her quietly like my posts. I wondered if she cared, if she hated me, if, in some tangled way, she understood. Mike and Olivia's divorce went through quietly. He tried texting me, sometimes calling late at night, his voice full of sorrow. I learned to ignore the calls. I didn't want to be anybody's second choice. My therapist told me that healing wasn't linear, that grief came in waves. I made new friends. I joined a book club. I started traveling, solo this time. Montreal in spring, Santa Barbara when I craved the sea. There's a myth in Los Angeles that if you can only hold on to yourself through the city's chaos, you come out stronger, forged by the sun and the endless possibilities, tempered by heartbreak and heat. I don't know if I believe it, but I do know that sometimes, in the afterglow of late afternoon, as the golden hour light pools in the empty corners of my apartment, I feel a strange sort of peace. Every so often, I walk by Mike in the hospital cafeteria. We nod, nothing more. I see Olivia in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, moving briskly through her world. We are survivors of our own private war, marked forever by what happened, but somehow still here. Los Angeles is a city of reinvention. Maybe it's the only place where you can lose absolutely everything you thought made you whole and begin again, not as someone new, but as someone true. Sometimes I still log on to The Secret Life. I still talk to women searching for escape, connection, hope. I tell them, stay open, even when it hurts. The truth will find you. The light always finds a crack. And if you're not careful, you might just find yourself too.